Hey guys, welcome to Academic Audit. This is the first episode featuring my longtime student Isabelle Simpson. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on. This is exciting. So just for folks who are listening or watching, just wanted to mention that we're gonna talk about. She was the 2025 Morehead Scholarship recipient at UNC. It's a huge deal. We're going to talk about her process of getting to that point of receiving the scholarship. We'll just talk all things school and extracurriculars and all those things too. So
Let's get into it.
yeah, let's do it. Awesome. So take me back to what do you feel like? So first of all, what are the main things that they're looking for in a Morehead candidate? We'll talk about that
Definitely.
first. Yeah,
So
then kind of dive into the school stuff.
Yeah, so they have four pillars, and that's kind of what I really focused on when I was applying to the scholarship. Scholarship, physical vigor, character, and
there's the leadership thing too, I think.
Thing.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I think that in my whole academic career, you can kind of see those and how I had those kind of well balanced, and that definitely helped me do well in the process.
Nice. Yeah. So and that's good because it's kind of. Did you kind of know about those pillars going into the application process
Definitely.
too? Like that was already kind of mapped out basically when you okay.
I kind of pinpointed the things of my past that I would be like, okay, this works for this works for this. And so I kind of made sure to touch on everything in the scholarship process.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, and also because I know you were, before we started recording, you were talking about kind of building up a resume starting freshman, sophomore year. Was that something teachers were having you do, or was that just something that was kind of recommended to you, or were you just kind of yourself thinking about building that up?
It was more self-motivated. So I have two
Yeah.
older siblings who also went to Page, and so I kind of watched them go through the process and getting involved in all the different things.
Yeah.
And when I first went to high school, I had this idea that I needed to do every single thing. So I joined every single club. And then my sophomore year is like, whoa, this is way too much. And so I started dropping out of a few clubs and finding the things that I really cared about. And that definitely, I found that passion at Page, and it helped me build that community.
Yeah, it was kind of like doing the essentials that were like, this is meaningful to me, and I know I can kind of give it my all, instead of just kind of build, throwing all this stuff in a resume
and not making
a
real impact. Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah, because it's and I know some things end up kind of the reality of this is that sometimes even if something is meaningful, sometimes it doesn't. There's not a lot of input continuously that goes onto it, but a lot of times that there is. Like it's those key things that are like, okay, I really want to be involved in this particular club. And just for those of you who are listening, Page is the high school she went to, and it's kind of a big public high school in Greensboro, and it sounds like a lot of your friends went there too.
Definitely,
from Canterbury Middle School and everything too, and just the neighborhood and everything too. So yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. So how did that all tie into everything? Like, was it helpful to not only have friends in school, that you knew beforehand, have friends in school, but also did you find yourself kind of studying with them too? Because this can kind of get into the whole scholarship pillar of the Morehead preparation. So maybe one thing I wanted to ask about was kind of solo studying versus group studying too, because obviously there's a whole crew of your friends there, and also just IB program classmates too. Walk me through how you went about studying in general, just big scope, specifics, whatever. Yeah.
So I think first off, at Page, I made a really big effort to get close to my teachers. And so I would make sure I was going to all their study sessions, kind of asking them what may be on this test, what should I focus on? And so that was kind of the thing I did independently. And I would look back over my notes, back over the book. And my way of studying was making a huge study sheet with every single thing on it. And that was just kind of to have it all in one place. And then usually a few days before the test, I would get together with my friends, usually at lunch, and just run over every single thing. And it kind of helped just talking things out. And that was especially something we did, was just kind of talking things out to help me remember.
Definitely.
And everything.
Did a ton of just talking through, explaining things.
Yeah.
And that, were those lunches at Starbucks?
Yes.
Cornwall?
Yeah. Daily lunches at Starbucks.
Yeah.
I'd pull out my big study sheet, run through it with my friends, and then we all did good. It was a good experience.
I was going to say, because it seems like there's definitely a team aspect to this, and obviously we'll get into that with the sports thing too, and maybe that even encouraged it somewhat. And an IB too, where it seems like all of y'all kind of pushed each other to the top. Because obviously, y'all were up there near the top of the class,
Mhm.
and it just seems like there's definitely some like pros in that sense to group studying
Yeah.
too. And then yeah, so then also a deeper dive onto the like the solo studying.
Mhm.
Maybe talk more about the study sheet. Like how did that all
Yeah.
go down? Because I'm kind of a huge nerd with like study
Uh-huh.
tactics and things like that. So
I think some people would
yeah.
say that it was overworking my studying, but I struggled to find the right technique. Like I
Yeah.
was a flashcard girl forever,
Ooh, that's
but
good.
I don't know, this just never really helped too much. And then I started just dropping all of the information on one sheet. And I felt like I had it all in one spot. I could read it over before the test. And also just writing the information, I think helped my brain remember it more. Um, but that was what I would do if I had a test. I would get my sheet out, go back through the book, go back through my notes, and write down everything I needed to know. Or if I knew something already, I would probably skip that. But everything that I
That
need
is
to work
huge because I
on.
was gonna say there's all this evidence about active recall,
Mm-hmm.
where active recall basically is just it's a general category of study where it's pretty much talking about self testing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so flashcards are part of that. Would you still do like flashcards as like, kind of in relation to your study sheet
Yeah,
or
if I
something?
didn't
And
know
like,
something as well, I would do like if it was a specific topic in history that I was needed to touch up on, I would just do flashcards for that specific
oh,
topic,
okay,
and then that
yeah,
would help me grasp it pretty quickly. So
yeah.
that definitely helped.
That's huge too for I think a lot of people will kind of get into this like rote memorization of things
Mm-hmm.
that they already know. And
Mm-hmm.
so and they'll like study all 500 flashcards
Yeah.
every day and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a
So
big
just
time
choosing the
waster.
specific things.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's just like, just even from a research standpoint, like we know that active recall like that works. And so another version could be like you do this thing called a brain dump where did you ever kind of like
Definitely.
yeah, it's like maybe you had the study sheet and maybe you like try to like not look at it and like just
Mm-hmm.
write as much as you did
Yes.
that ever happen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or sometimes instead of flashcards, I would just write the vocab words down and then try to like recall the definition as I was reading down the list. And if I
Oh,
didn't know it,
yeah.
I would go back and look it up and then try it again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like alternate to flashcards, I feel like.
Yeah. And well, that's the thing because active recall can really like come in different forms in that
Mm-hmm.
sense too. And so, yeah, no, and also I guess the other thing I like about the study sheet is, was it maybe just like I'm trying to picture it like,
A
what would it,
colorful, crazy mess with all my different pens and
yeah.
highlighters, and it looked like insane with tiny little writing. But for me, it worked.
Yeah.
So that's what I stuck with.
Oh, I think that's good too because it's like it also it avoids the whole like continuously like rewriting everything over and over and over again
Mm-hmm.
because they've found in like studies that that doesn't really like that's not as like impactful for just like internalizing the
Mm-hmm.
info. So the study sheet, I feel like it's like you had the experience of writing the stuff down, which studies also show that that's really good too. The physical writing of things instead of just like typing or
Yeah,
reading on the keyboard. But it's nice that you had. So it was. I think another thing is the organization probably too. That it was
definitely.
all in like one. Maybe it's like study sheet for like unit 1.2 or
Mm-hmm.
something is like all right
Mm-hmm.
there or
And then I would keep
something.
it for the final exam, AP test, or IB test, and then I would pull it all out at the end of the year. And I would already have it done, and that was very
Nice.
helpful.
Yeah. And was that like when you how was it organized
I would just put it all
usually?
in a folder. So every unit, I would have my sheet and then keep it. And then at the end of the year, I had it all together in one spot.
So it was by unit,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing with a lot of like the APIB classes too. They're organized by like unit numbers
Yeah,
sometimes too, and so that that's really helpful just in terms of how you organized it too.
definitely.
Yeah, and then also because you were in the IB program, which again for people listening, that's a program that some high schools offer, and it's called the International Baccalaureate, and you get this extra diploma for doing it. There's service hours involved, so I'm sure we can dive into some of that. But it's known to has a reputation for having a lot of work and some late nights potentially of work too. Like, how did you feel like you dealt with? Would you have like strategies to deal with the workload and like maybe even the stress
Yeah.
sometimes too?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think for IB, it's definitely a lot of work, but I had things like activities that would kind of get me away from that. And for field hockey, that was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And so I made sure that any of the outside activities I took that weren't having to do with IB, it was something like I was really passionate about and excited to get to work with. And
Yeah.
so when I was done studying, I could have a break with something that I enjoy doing in a different light. And that helped with the balance aspect of it. But also
Yeah.
just again, the group work with IB and also just the group mentality. Like, I know all of the fellow IB students are working this hard, and it's hard for all of them. And so that was kind of kept that in my mind. And like, if they're doing it, I can do it. So it's kind of this group motivation. And especially with Page being so big, having that mini 60-person group of people who I know so well and are doing the same thing I am and experience the same stress I am, that was always really comforting to know.
That's a huge thing, because it's just like there's all the solo, like, you know, this is like my personal kind of like how I like to study, but then there's like the, you know, the other benefit of the groups of like you're bouncing ideas off of each other too, and like maybe someone, you know, like, you know, Riley or Sally is like bringing up, you know, something that, you know, you didn't think of, or maybe you're contributing in that way too. So that's a huge thing, and it kind of connects to the sports, which is, you know, that's yet another, you know, pillar of the Morehead Scholarship. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel like one kind of inspired the other? Like maybe like how do you feel like playing on a team sport led to almost like an improvement in like group studying, or even vice versa, kind of too?
It's all the group mentality, and like you get in what you put out. And so for field hockey, I was the captain this year, and that's always what I wanted to do. Going to high school, I wanted to be the captain. And so just knowing that all that hard work that I put in my freshman, sophomore, and junior year paid off to being the captain and being able to lead the team my senior year. And so it's kind of like, if I'm going to put in this hard work, it has to pay off. And it should pay off. And so the same with IB. I'm not going to try hard for a month and then give up for a month, or not. I just know there's an end reward and an end goal. And so just putting in all that work will always pay off.
Yeah, and it's also specifically delayed gratification too. That's like huge, because I just feel like there's, especially in today's world, there's just so much like instant gratification with things like social media and like procrastination just of all forms. It's like, this is like, it's doing IB, and I recognize this too as someone who's a natural procrastinator too. I feel like it just gets you in this vibe of wanting to, like, you learn how to delay gratification by like kind of putting in the work now and then having it pay off later. Obviously paid off big time for you too. So, and then also too, the sports thing has, I mean, like playing field hockey and lacrosse has leadership involved too, because you were captain. And how do you feel like, were you, as the season went on, did you already feel like you were kind of like, okay, I'm super comfortable being captain and like, you know, being a leader, or did that kind of like develop as the season went on?
Yeah,
like that's always wonder about.
Our team, my coach Lance, he did it in a great way that it was voted by the team on who captain was. And so I kind of felt like, okay, I know it wasn't just his choice, it was everyone's choice. And so I knew that, okay, it's time to step up. They want me as captain. And so I need to not disappoint them and work the hardest. So like, if we're doing a mile run, I'm going to try to put my hardest work in and show them that they should too. And so that was a big thing. And also the difference between field hockey and lacrosse was interesting, because in field hockey, I was like a starter, and I was done that all my life. But on lacrosse, it was a different perspective, as I wasn't the best on the team, and I didn't start. I was
Except
on
for
the
your
bench
speed.
a lot. But it was also just knowing that leadership comes in different ways. And on field hockey, I was the obvious leader. I was the captain. But in lacrosse, like, I'm not the best of the sport, and a lot of girls weren't either. But if I try my hardest, they are too. And so that was definitely interesting.
That's really cool, because it's kind of like it was like a different form of leadership. You're basically saying, it's like, okay, I'm going to be that example of, I know I'm not the best in this sport, but I'm going to be that example of like the one who like shows up,
definitely
puts in the work, and then that's going to inspire the underclassmen, you know, like the freshmen, sophomores, to, you know, put in the same work, and maybe they'll be captain one day too.
And that was just a life lesson in general, that if you're not the best at something, still try at it. And then it paid off for me in my junior year. I got to be on the starting lineup. So definitely paid
huge. Yeah. I'm just saying, just, you know, put this out there. I've seen a few of the games. She is insanely fast. I've never seen someone run that fast across different sports too. So did you ever do track or anything?
I did my freshman year, but I chose winter track, and the cold wasn't for me. So
oh yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking like, man, what if, you know, club track at UNC or something? Yeah, that's, you know, you never know. I think there's potential there. So yeah, but okay, so really, like, that's kind of covering. What are other examples of throughout, like, and we can get into clubs with this too, with leadership, and even like involve character in there too. That's another one of the 4 pillars there. So how do you feel like being involved in clubs? Like, did you lead any clubs? Or
I did. I was
student council also,
president of IB advisory board, and so that's recruiting for the IB program. And so IB was something I became really passionate about because I knew how much of a stronger student it made me from sophomore year to junior year and then to senior year. There was just obvious growth there. And so I wanted to get incoming freshmen to do the program as well. So that was kind of my job for president, was going to middle schools and saying, you should try it. I know you've heard it's hard, but it's worth it.
I forgot.
So that was fun. And then I was also in student council. I was the social chair, and so I did all the dance planning. And that was definitely, I stepped up a lot in the two different dances, and that was definitely a stressful time, but it paid off again when I saw the dance go well. And then my other big thing I did at Page was a food drive with my friend Riley. We did, it was for so in IB you have to do a CAST project, and it's like a service project, and so we chose to do a food drive at Page. And that was something, again, that I was just, it took a lot of time, but I was happy to give away that time because it was something I was passionate about.
Yeah. No, and that's what's great is like, it's kind of going to that theme of like, you stuck to the clubs that you were like, I'm going to make a huge difference with these. I'm going to like pour a lot of my time into these things. And that's like, that's so much more effective than just kind of like, being the person that just like does 50 different clubs, but it just kind of shows
and
up
also people
or something.
Were relying on me. And so I had a job and I was going to get it done. But if I didn't have those leadership roles or like that close connection with the clubs, I probably wouldn't have been as motivated to make that much of a difference.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And speaking of too, because I know now that we're hearing about all this, like, clearly academic leadership. I mean, you're, a lot of people were striving to be what you were as a student, and, you're the captain, you're leading all these clubs. Like, how do you feel like these leadership positions like helped your just general character develop like over the 4 years? Like, do you notice any kind of like changes in yourself kind of from like freshman to senior year?
I mean, like I was saying with lacrosse and field hockey was the time I was kind of stepping up, but lacrosse was kind of the step back and learn. And so that kind of gave me the balance in life that sometimes you need to lead and teach other people, but there's also times that other people can help you so much. And so just knowing that, that you don't have to be the named leader of a group and teach everyone and everything like that. But sometimes it's better to just take a step back and learn from the people who are experienced like that.
Best leaders are also good listeners. It's like one of those things. And so I think that's what several presidents have said that too, where it's just kind of, and it's just such a good like perspective to take too. I feel like it's a really wise thing to think about. And also going back into academics, like what do you feel like were some of your because I know the Morehead obviously it looks at really well-rounded candidates, so it's definitely not just about being stuck behind a screen and just being kind of like the top student and without kind of being involved in other things. So but what do you feel like your main kind of like academic strengths were? This could be like classes, like SAT stuff too, like we can dive into all that.
I'm going to say, I think that something that the IB program helped me was like working for long-term goals, because especially you have to write an essay for every class, and that's an essay you work on for 4 or 5 months. And so just starting it and knowing that it's going to be a long road ahead and it will be hard to finish it, but once you do, it's going to pay off and help me get my IB diploma. And so that's something I definitely learned through Page, was just, it's when things seem like they're so far away from getting finished and it's going to take a lot of work, just stick with it. And there's also the reaching out for help. I think I learned a lot with teachers and building those connections. And just knowing that when I struggle, there's people around me who have been through it before and they can help me too. And so just knowing when to ask for help.
That's another thing, because it's like you've got your study groups and then your own like solo study methods, but then it's like basically you're telling me this earlier too about like Canterbury, like going to Canterbury Middle School and elementary school, like it got you in the habit of, because it was a smaller environment at the time, like help you get in the habit of talking to teachers. Definitely. And that's something I've seen in that Cal Newport book, the How to Be a Straight A Student. Like he recommends that big time for college, like no matter how big or small the class is, just like making sure, but especially in the cases where you could be just like a number in a bigger class, like getting to know the teachers, like almost half the battle academically.
I was just at UNC orientation a couple weeks ago, and an art history professor came in and he says, drop by my office hours when you don't have a problem, so that when you do have a problem, you know me well enough and we have a connection already to fix it. And so I think that was really great. And something I did at Page, just getting to know someone before it gets bad and when you really need their help.
Yes, kind of, and that's also like encouraging. Like this is why I just think everyone should be like proactive about that. Like we can learn from you, in this sense where it's like just assuming that like, okay, I want to establish this connection like almost day one if I can. And because then when I run into a, a bump in the road, or if I do like, somewhere down the road, it's like now I know I have someone I can comfortably talk to, like a teacher. And, that's just another aspect of like, because even maybe before the group meetings, it's like, oh, the teacher kind of gave us a hint that we should study on this stuff. And that's just like a huge academic hack, I feel like sometimes too.
Building the connections.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think any other, like, how did you like talk like time management for a minute too? Like how did you feel like, did you have any like strategies for just like keeping your energy up? Because I know obviously there's some stressful moments like late nights and stuff like that. Did you like, kind of organize that in any way that worked for you?
I think balance was a big thing for me because in the beginning of IB, I found myself sitting at my dining room table studying for 5 hours straight, and I was going insane and not learning anything. But there's things like field hockey that helped me get a break from that. So I'd study for an hour before, go do field hockey, get my mind off of it and doing that, or going in study groups with my friends, or just working beside them in silence together. I think there's things like that. They just keep your mind sane instead of getting all this new information over and over and over.
Yeah, it's like accountability buddy kind of like focus. Like it's almost like the study with me stuff that you see sometimes.
And I definitely made sure to set aside family time and friend time, even if I might not know the material as well. And I just knew I needed to break for a little bit. And it wouldn't be the end of the world if I didn't know one thing on the test.
That's what I'm saying, because it's also sometimes the test doesn't introduce that like topic that maybe kind of like maybe you didn't read as much about. Sometimes it integrates it in a different way too. And so and also the breaks are so important. Again, so I keep referring to research, but it's just, we want this to all be like actionable info, and like what you're doing falls in perfectly with what research suggests to do, which is like taking breaks. And it's kind of this difference between this like passive, or it's like the focused and diffuse mindsets, where it's almost like you're focused on your work, and then the diffuse mindset is when you're kind of like, now you're out there, burning the cows, doing like playing a game or whatever. And it's you got to have time away from your studies too. So that kind of like alternation's like really cool. And just really, really good idea. So, also how do you like, why do you think, because obviously we've been kind of covering all the pillars of the, like what makes a good Morehead candidate. Walk me through not only kind of the interview process and like what kinds of questions they asked you, but also like, maybe at the end, like, why do you think that you were, a really good Morehead candidate and why you were a good fit for it? So
for the Morehead, well, first off, I originally decided to apply, and I wouldn't have before because my sister actually got the Morehead.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, okay, you should try it. And
runs in the fam.
There's just no way I'm going to get this. Yeah. My sister was very like artsy and a different type of mind than mine. And so I didn't think that we were the same at all. So I didn't think I could get it. But they're looking for everything. They're looking for all sorts of people. Yeah. So I didn't want to apply. I kind of was like, okay, fine, I'll try it. I'll do the application. So there was 3 rounds, and the first round was mostly written questions. Yeah. And then there was one interview like online that was 2 minutes, and a question would pop up on the screen.
Oh, that's right. It was kind of like you have to elaborate on something for like 90 seconds or
and then it just stops recording, and oh well, hopefully you did good. And then the second round was more interviews like that. So it was 5 interviews in a row. And so a question would pop up on the screen. You'd have 15 seconds to think about it and 90 seconds to answer.
Oh, that was also virtual too?
Yeah, the second round was virtual as well. And then after that was finalist weekend. And finalist weekend overall was amazing, even if you don't get the Morehead. It was just a great experience to learn about UNC. And I tell people that the Morehead process helped me learn so much about myself. Like I felt like I was just pulling more things that I wanted them to know about me.
What were some of those things?
I think just everything I was involved in, I didn't really realize how much I was learning from all that, but just writing those questions and answering those interview questions really helped me realize that all of the things I did at Page and in my community helped me learn something that I'm going to carry on. Yeah. But overall, the interviews was the part that I was most stressed for, just because I didn't know what it was going to be. Yeah. So for prep for that, I went online and just found a bunch of interview questions that have been in the past for Morehead or other scholarships as well. Because I also applied, I did Morehead, and then I did the Robertson, which is the Duke and UNC scholarship, and then the Jefferson, which is the UVA. And so I was juggling all those at once, which was definitely a stressful time on top of IB and on top of college applications. So that was definitely tough. But
yeah, like it's seriously, like IB, it's again, we come back to delayed gratification because there is a lot going on at once, but it pays off big time, and it just teaches you delayed gratification in general, which is the best kind of master life habit, I'd say for people to have. And yeah, so then why do you, I don't know, so you then you got it, which I mean I was ecstatic about when you texted me that. And what do you like, why do you personally think what was like, maybe an X factor in your resume or your character that you feel like, what do you feel like were some of the main things that, were reasons that you won the Morehead Scholarship?
Yeah. One thing that my mom helped me a lot in the process, just also building my confidence and getting me ready for it.
Yeah.
But one thing she kept telling me was, you can't fake who you are. So I just tried to think about everything I've ever done and tried to give Morehead everything about me. And if they liked it, they liked it. But if they didn't, they didn't. And it wasn't what they were looking for. So that just understanding that I wasn't putting on a mask. It was just me, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so just coming to terms with that and figuring out everything that I want them to know about me.
I just wanted to get into some stats, honestly, like GPA, like SAT score, because I know people listening to this who may be thinking about the Morehead Scholarship or about, applying even like smaller scholarships too that, require like a certain GPA threshold or something. What kind of stats were you looking at in high school in general?
So I think I ended my GPA with around a 4.6.
Okay.
Or a 4.0 without the inflated
Without
grades.
the weighting. Yeah.
And then my SATs was a 710 on reading and math, reading and math. So 1420.
Oh, you're right down the middle.
Yeah,
of
it's
both.
crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah. That's yeah. So when we were talking about the weighted thing, it's basically the weighted GPAs because we have IB and AP credits sometimes, and so it's like like brings it above.
Yeah.
Because wait, what were the credits for the AP IB classes were worth 5 points?
Is that okay? Honors was 4.5, and then regular was 4.
When I was in school, it was like 6, but it was I guess there's all kinds of weighting things. But long story short, like at any, if we had more of a standardized system, you'd be 4.0. That means you just got straight A's. So yeah. And again, for Morehead, I don't think you don't need straight A's necessarily. I don't think, but it's like, so because it's all like well-rounded.
They don't require any SAT score or any grades like A's, all A's or anything like that, A's and B's. And scholarship is just one of the 4 pillars. So I think that's really important to think about that. It's more your character and what you've done and the activities you've done. And scholarship is important and your grades are important, but it's not all they're looking at. Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it objectively, it's literally 25% of it, right? And so that's a huge thing to think about. And but it's also, as a sort of a reality point, I'm sure the fact that you had straight A's and had a 1420 out of 1600 on the SAT, that's like, it's going to be a tiebreaker maybe in some cases. Definitely.
Because that's the thing, is because you kind of noticed during your interview, this is something you were saying a little bit earlier, you noticed some like really kind of impressive candidates there, I want to talk about that a little bit briefly too.
I talked about a little earlier, the third round is finalist weekend, and so that's at UNC. And I was talking, there's around 120 students there, and they'll choose 100 to offer the scholarship to, and then 70 will accept it, or around 75 will accept it. And I was talking to the other students there, and all I could think in my head was total imposter syndrome. Why am I here? These people are crazy. They have 1600s on their SAT, and they're doing all these extra classes that I could never imagine juggling with my schedule. And so I kind of had to get over that. But then when I tried to talk to them more about what they were involved in, it was kind of silence. And I was like, well, what do you do? Do you do sports? No. Do you do anything? I think that it's important that you have these good grades, but you also have the experiences. And that's really, I would argue, more important than the straight A's. I'd rather throw a B in there and have 2 more activities. Okay,
so let's talk tutoring, right? So, be like honest, like how have like specifically have I helped you with things? And this could be in like scores going up on things, or we'll maybe get into some of the more subjective stuff after, but just what can you think of?
There's obvious evidence that I came to you in a panic 3 months before the paper SAT was about to end, and I was like, I need to get my score up 120 points. Can you help me? And you were like, okay, we got this. Don't worry. And just the things you helped me with, timing for the SAT, the specific math and English stuff, and then also just the mindset and just preparation really helped me bring that score up, which I didn't think was possible.
Like the test strategies, like psychological? Okay.
So I think for psychological, just how to prepare before, get sleep, eat food, like
Yeah.
don't
Protein in
stress you
the
out too
morning.
much. It'll
Yeah.
be okay. And then for the actual tutoring, simple math shortcuts saved me minutes for every single problem, and a minute matters so much. And I was never finishing the math test before I went to you. And then I had a couple minutes to spare where I could look over everything.
Nice.
And that was definitely a big difference.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. Do you happen to remember any of those, like certain strategies on certain problems? Or
There was one thing you told me about. So this was the paper version, but going to the end of the book first and doing the easier problems before. And then if I ran out of time, I wouldn't have to skip the easy problems. So I'd have those, and it was just more adding points to my score. And that was something that jumped my paper. I think I got 20 more points, and that's how I ended with the SAT score that I wanted.
Yeah. Do you feel like you feel like it gave you more time at the end to just reflect on the harder ones, or even just get to and guess them? Kind of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I remember that was back when, so that was the paper SAT, which the digital still has that with the fill-in ones, but it's kind of like the whole point is to, exactly, get those kind of easy fill-in ones first, and then you're not having to like take wild guesses on the fill-ins at the end when time's you're in a time crunch.
And then with English, simply just reading the questions before I read the essay helped me so much. And I was just like, kind of had it in the back of my mind, and I was looking for the questions, even if I didn't really like actively recall them. Like I knew what I was kind of looking for, where to focus and not. And that definitely helped my score big time.
Yeah. So. Okay, awesome. So it's kind of like priming your brain in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Trying to think what else, like in terms of just SAT stuff in general.
Trying to think about the SAT, it was so long ago. Maybe the
maybe what about how much did your score go up actually?
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah. So
where did you start at?
I came to you with for my math, I know I started with a 600 and then ended with a 710 in the 3 months that I started going to you, which was insane because that's exactly what I wanted, because I was focusing on getting above a 1400, and that helped me get even higher.
Nice.
And so that was the big thing.
Yeah. Good stuff. And it was, because you were trying to go up 100 something just overall. You were saying earlier, and then
100 on my math. I was
okay, awesome,
yes.
and that's 600 to 700. That 700, that's legit. You're in the good region.
Yeah, I was
there.
so happy for that.
Yeah, you ended with 1420, so that's like way up there. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, do you feel like now, I guess we could, some of this applies to maybe the school classes too. Was there anything? So I guess the first thing we ever did together, I believe, was a summer packet for it was like going through a summer packet, some problems for pre-calc, or maybe it was like a review type thing. So we'll maybe get into some of the class stuff too. I'm just thinking about did I do anything to like help out with, any potential like test grades going up, like in certain math classes or just in general helping out?
Yeah. So I've always kind of been a more history writing sided student. And so math and chemistry was where I struggled a lot.
Oh, chemistry.
And especially with chemistry, you were very, very helpful. Just finding the way you're taught in class isn't always the easiest way. And I would come to you saying, this is impossible. I don't know how I'm ever going to do this. And you're like, oh, there's an easier way. And that would just click in my mind. And then I would go back to school the next day and teach everyone else and be like, okay, this is so much better.
Oh yeah. You became this like class, like TA kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
And so just little things like that made me less stressed, and going from I'm never going to learn this to, okay, wait, I got this. This is easy. And so chemistry especially, that helped. And then pre-calc as well. My teacher wasn't as like hands-on, and so I wasn't learning as much as I wanted to. And just going to you every week helped me. I would bring the stuff that I was wildly confused on, and then I'd end knowing exactly the material. I think those were the big things. Yeah,
because I remember you were talking about before, like it was your study. I could tell this with sessions too. Like your study focuses it was all about the things that in particular were hard for you, and not just kind of always just revamping or not always repracticing the easy stuff for you.
Because I could do that on my own, but going to you we had the weekly sessions every Thursday, and so before I would make sure I knew all the easy stuff, and I would come to you with the stuff that I was struggling on, and then for the whole week I would know exactly the material I needed to. And so just bringing you the stuff that was really confusing and walking away knowing it was the biggest thing. Yeah,
I could tell, because I just feel like you always, this is another reason probably why you're such a good student and got the Morehead, because you I just feel like you always knew what you wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Kind of. I think that's it. That's
Definitely.
huge.
I would come
Because
to you with a note and be like, okay, we need to go over these today. And you're like, okay, we got it.
yeah,
And that was the biggest thing. Even if we ran over and you're like, okay, we know we have one more thing to do. We got to get this. And then I would be good for the week.
yeah,
That was the biggest thing for me.
kind of looking ahead a
Yeah,
little bit.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think I had tried a lot of tutors in the past, and I would catch myself zoning out and walking away feeling like I just slept that whole session and I don't know what happened. And then for like your sessions, I would be like, okay, I have Percy this week. I can get some stuff done. It'll be fun. We'll laugh about it. And it was just a good experience overall.
That's awesome to hear. Thanks for saying that too. Because I try to make it fun, if I can. And it's, there's all this stuff about, boredom's like the worst state to try and learn in. And like,
And
having.
it just stresses you out more.
Yeah.
Like I need that laughter break sometimes to be like, okay, it's okay. I don't know this right now, and I will. Like just that was a nice balance.
Yeah, and also it's like the I will thing, because you were kind of saying earlier off recording about how it's like the consistency. You said something about like just like the weekly consistency being important. Like you feel like that kind of gave you, I don't know, like structure to
Yes.
prepare for things
Definitely.
too. Like
Yeah, I would recommend having that for sure, because I knew what my week was going to look like, and I knew that when I had questions at school, I had you on Thursday to answer them.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
And especially even if we like ran out of time in a session, you're like, okay, I'm going to send you some problems tonight and work them out, and then you'll see it. I might get a text from you at like 12:30, but you still remember to send me those problems when you got
Classic,
time. And then I'd go over the next morning and feel good about it. So it was just always, the tutoring sessions weren't over when like our session ended. You were constantly like, okay, how'd you do on that test? Do you need help with this? And I would send you a question and be like, can you explain this? I don't understand it. Just a picture. And you'd respond 5 minutes later with it all worked out. And so it was just
Yeah.
nice to always know that if I had a question, I could always text you about it.
That's great. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and this is great for me because this is really helpful because it's almost like I'm taking data, like trying to, I always try to just improve my own things
Yeah.
every week and how I relate to people and teach people, and so it's all a work in progress.
Yeah.
And then the fun thing though, I'm glad because it's true, like there's sometimes a few minutes where we just kind of talk about life or whatever, and obviously the main focus is still on the content and
Yeah,
stuff.
I walk away knowing more than I would with a regular tutor, 100%. Like one that I would just be zoned out with.
Yeah, well, that's great to know. And just I'm trying to think anything else that you think just tutoring helped with in general, or like do you have any like kind of reasons why you'd kind of recommend tutoring in general to other people who are coming up and maybe
Yeah.
kind of on a similar path or something?
Yeah, especially with IB, it's just a really busy schedule, and knowing that I'm going to set an hour aside to make sure that I know the material I'm working with is really comforting, because I think sometimes it's hard to say, okay, I need to work on the stuff that it's really tough for me. It's easier to do the easy stuff first when you have free time,
Yeah.
but just having that hour where I would go through the hard stuff and I know that I would walk away with more understanding was
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and again, it's because I know it's something that people are kind of like skeptical about for that same reason, that you had originally had, where it was like you feel like you would space out, or it was kind of like almost like a more of a stale environment kind of thing. But it's really actually can be a super helpful thing, and you took full advantage of it and crushed it. So I mean that's just really awesome. And I guess one thing I wanted to end on is because obviously you've got college coming up, and maybe there are certain aspects of the Morehead thing that you haven't been introduced to yet, and maybe there's activities, or you obviously have new classes coming up. Is there anything you're excited to try that you haven't tried before, or is there anything that you would do differently from what you did in high school, in terms of whether that's studying or
Yeah.
things to take advantage of?
I think in high school, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but going in my freshman and sophomore year and trying to get involved with every single thing was so stressful and daunting, and I wasn't having like any real impacts. And so
Yeah.
I think that it's nice to try things out and find what you're passionate in and then focus on those things, instead of just having a packed full schedule without any real rewards. And so I think
Yeah.
that that's something that I would change my sophomore and freshman year, because then I found when I focused on the 2 or 3 things that I was really passionate about, that's when I was like enjoying myself the most and the activities that I learned the most from. So
Right.
that's definitely something to find those things that you really want to do in high school. And then in the future, I think with the Morehead, it gives you a great opportunity to take the risks. Like I was talking about with the camping trip that I'm doing, that's nothing I would ever choose to do on my own. But them kind of
Yeah.
pushing me across and getting me to do that, I think it would be a great experience for me. So
Posing
just
a
taking
challenge.
those risks. Yeah.
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 Yep. No, that's the thing is I feel like there's going to be certain aspects to the Morehead. So basically what you're trying to say is like pushing outside the comfort zone a
Yeah,
little bit too.
definitely.
Maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's going to be a big source of that. And so, yeah, no, this is really excited for you. Just congrats on just everything you've done. And it's awesome working with you. I'm always here for you still in college potentially.
It'll
So
still be happening in college.
yeah, I'll have my phone on me. So yeah, just thanks for coming on too.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.